Well, hello there and welcome to Adolescence on Air with me and my boys. You are listening to our first ever episode. Before you do continue to listen to the rest of this episode, I just need to give the disclaimer that listener discretion is advised, as the content we're discussing in today's episode may be distressing or triggering for some listeners. With that in mind, you may want to get a trusted adult or friend or colleague to listen to the episode before, and then obviously make that decision of whether it is suitable for you. Now, without further ado, let me introduce my guests. So first of all, we have the lovely Ryan Hardie, who is my assistant editor. And last but not least, because I only have two guests, we're joined with Adolescence's fabulous creative director, Sophie Blackmore.
Hello,
hi guys.
Hi.
We obviously know each other, but, you know, for formality for the podcast. So, we're just going to be talking about a couple of topics today. We've kind of got like an umbrella, and then there's things within that. Those main general topics that we're going to delve into as well. So today's podcast is going to be about bereavement, death and grief. Not the most exciting or I don't know how to describe it.
Not really an entertaining topic, but
No.
It's not one that people like to talk about.
Yeah,
which is
something
why
that
we're
needs to be
talking
talked about.
Yeah, because you wouldn't immediately think, oh, someone's done a podcast on death, I really want to listen to
Yeah,
that.
the same as you wouldn't go into a conversation with someone and be like, hey, let's talk about death,
Yeah.
you know?
But the main ethos behind this podcast is that we want to make the subject about death, especially with teenagers, a lot more kind of acceptable, I suppose, because it's something that does need to be spoken about. Obviously, I understand that there are people out there that aren't going to be as people are going to be more hesitant about talking about the subject, but
it happens.
And we also want to give a platform for people who may have experienced bereavement themselves or are currently in a stage of grief. So moving on from that, that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to kind of start off the podcast with something a little bit more fun. So it's basically a game of two truths, one lie. I'm guessing you guys know how to play that. Yeah. So we're going to tell each other two truths and one lie, just to kind of introduce ourselves to you guys, because we've known each other for 2 years nearly now.
Yeah.
Nearly finished with our course. But you guys listening might not know who we are. So, Ryan, do you want to go first?
Yeah, all right. Okay, my 3 points are...
Oh, can I just say we have to guess which one is a lie out of the two truths and a lie?
Okay, so my 3 parts are... I can't ride a bike, I can't swim, and I've never broken a bone in my body.
Oh, that's difficult. Because then, you rode a boat. You rode a bike before when we were doing the test shoot, but
you were practicing.
Yeah.
I believe that you can swim, because I feel like we've had a conversation about breaking bones before.
Yeah.
So I think the lie is that you don't know how to swim.
Okay, Emma?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the same.
Correct.
Yes.
Hey.
I can swim. I'm a very good swimmer. I just can't ride a bike or can't tell the time.
We'll see you at the next Olympics then, yeah?
No, not that good.
Bradley Wiggins over here. I think that's his name, isn't it?
He's a cyclist.
Cyclist.
You do the triathlon. Cycling, swimming and running.
But Sophie, you'll go.
My 3 ones are: in secondary school, someone shut my locker door onto my hand. Oh. I once fell down part of a steep cliff edge when searching for crystal rocks. And I own a bright pair of orange leg warmers.
She definitely does have leggings, bright orange leggings, 100%.
Leg warmers.
Leg warmers, yeah.
That's
the type of thing that you would look at and think, yeah, I need that.
The cliff
for some
one
reason.
is true, because I remember having a conversation in first year with you about that, I think.
That's going to be the legging.
Okay,
Yeah,
so what one do you think is a lie?
What was the first one, sorry?
In secondary school, someone shut my locker door onto my hand.
I feel like that one could be true as well. I feel like...
Maybe it's the legging. Surely you've got a pair of leggings. that wouldn't just come up. Bright orange leggings.
But she was talking with Becky about these two truths and one lie over lunch, so I feel like Becky might have contributed that. Should we just go... You go for leg warmers and I'll go for the locker, and then one of us will win.
All right.
I'm going
to go leg warmers is a lie.
I'm going to go with the locker.
The locker is a lie.
Hey!
See, I thought that. I did think that, but I went
have
with the
a
consensus.
bright orange pair of leg warmers, but I've
you
never
do.
worn them. I got them because they
Yeah,
were cool in
right.
primary school.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
right.
And I did fall down part of a steep cliff when I was searching for crystal rocks.
Yeah, and wasn't your mum there?
I was with my friend and their parents.
Oh, okay. I didn't remember the complete
I
story.
hurt my
but
leg.
I remember you telling me that you fell down a cliff, and I was just like, oh my god, that sounds
But I've
horrific.
never had my hand shut in a locker door.
I'm glad you haven't, because that must be painful. I think I've had my hand shut in like a car door before, and like I
Ooh.
screamed. Yeah. But now's time for mine, I suppose. Number one, I used to be scared that sharks lived in swimming pool drains. So you know the section of the swimming pool. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still scared of that. Let's just. put that out there.
To be honest, I haven't been swimming in ages, but yeah. Number two, I used to think that Dubai is where South America is. And number three,
Still does.
I held. No, I don't. I held a baby crocodile on holiday, and it peed on me.
I feel like the first one is the truth because
Where's Emma been on holiday
I
before?
feel like we've talked about swimming pools before.
this wrong.
What?
I've just told you two truths and one lie.
That's what it
That's
is.
what we got to do.
Do you mean 2 lies and 1 truth?
Oh no, I've done it right.
Okay. So only one of them is a lie, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'm trying to think where she's gone on holiday, or where she would have been, where there would have been baby crocodiles, because that's pretty.
Australia
Has she been
is
to
all I
Australia?
can. I don't think she has.
It'd have to be Australia, America.
I feel like-
but then, has she been to America? That's not really a European thing.
And the Dubai one, like, I feel like it's just a bit random to think about.
That Dubai is in where? South
In
America.
South America.
Yeah.
That's
used
a
to
pretty-
think that it was in South America.
That's. I could say that is probably true. I think.
Yeah,
reckon
I feel like the lie is
because she's smart, but
No, I feel like the crocodile
geography
one
is
is
you know.
is like a
Red herring.
decoy. Yeah, like a red herring.
I reckon maybe she's held something on holiday, but it didn't pee on her. What was the first one?
That I used to be scared that sharks lived in.
Definitely
swimming
true.
I think that's
I
true.
reckon the crocodile.
Okay, I'm gonna go for the Dubai one being a lie.
pools. Okay.
I'm gonna go the crocodile.
Ryan is correct.
Damn.
I did actually hold a crocodile on holiday though,
But it
and it
didn't
was
pee.
in Spain.
Oh right, fair
Yeah.
enough. I said
Oh.
it wasn't really a European thing, but fair enough.
No, I think I'm pretty sure it was in Spain.
All right,
But yeah, so
but it
I
didn't
did
pee on
actually
you, no.
used to think that Dubai was in South America. Well, was where South America is located because I was writing a story about someone being on holiday in Dubai, and I just made the flight longer. for some
Did
reason.
you ever slip up in a geography exam by writing about something in South America and putting Dubai?
In all fairness,
No,
you thought where
'cause I
Spain
I
was
didn't
above
do
Australia.
geography.
We
Like-
don't talk about this, Ryan.
Yeah, Sophie kind of thought that Spain was on the other side of the world, but you know. No, actually, I didn't do geography. I did history, but when we did do
did I.
geography, it was just about like cliffs and stuff. Moving on from that, so we've got another guessing game this time. However, it's a bit more related to today's topics. So before experiencing it myself and having conducted research for this podcast, I was kind of unsure of the differences between bereavement and grief. So I just want you guys to take a guess at what the definitions of each of them are. Obviously, listeners at home or wherever you're listening to us, you can also take a guess too. But bereavement, what do you think it means or is?
Bereavement. Well, it's obviously involved probably a close family member passing away, and it's difficult because you associate both words with a similar thing,
Yeah.
I feel like
with kind of after death feelings.
bereavement is the actual like death part of it, like, you know, it's happened to you,
Yeah.
and then like
Grieving
grief is the process
So
you've
grieving
got to
is
go
more
through.
long term, and bereavement is instant or short term.
I'm not sure, like, I know grief is sort of like the process you go through,
Yeah.
but to me bereavement would kind of be the same thing without knowing the definition.
Yeah. Okay. So, according to dictionary.com and another website that I can't remember, bereavement is described to be a period of mourning after a loss, especially after the death of a loved one, or it's a state of intense grief. What are your guys' guesses for grief the definition.
So bereavement, she literally just said, is what we thought, kind of.
Yeah.
Is more instant.
That's what
So grieving. Is it
Grieving,
grieving?
yeah,
I thought it was.
Grieving, I feel, is sort of not getting over it, but trying to find a way out of
Probably more long term then. Probably more how you progress after
like
bereavement.
trying to find yourself again,
after
and trying to
bereavement,
be
I'd say
okay
that's
again,
probably a
I
good
guess.
You kind of on the same lines, I suppose. I disagree with this definition. Again, it's I think dictionary.com, but grief is a feeling of extreme sadness. And personally, I'm currently still grieving. I disagree with that because I think it's more than just sadness. So, for example, everyone's experience with grief is a lot different. Obviously, me and the next person might grieve in a completely different way, and
I'm sure me and you have grieved in very different ways.
Yeah.
Because obviously, like Ryan, you lost your mum. Actually, right, we'll get onto this later. I don't like the word using euphemisms when it comes to dying. But yeah, your mum died when you were younger, and mine died 10 months ago, roughly. So we've obviously grieved in different ways. Obviously, you probably grieved a lot younger than I did, and grieving as a child is different to as a teenager.
I'll get onto that later.
Yeah, because we're going to talk a bit about our own experience whilst also like linking back to some research that I've done. But something that I've experienced, I don't know if you guys know about grief attacks, because when I was in secondary school, I heard about panic attacks. I heard about anxiety attacks with Zorella coming out about it, and some of my friends had panic attacks. But grief attacks, I didn't know until I had them myself. So if you don't know what grief attacks are, they're basically kind of like, for me at least, I experienced them as being kind of like a sudden memory that my mum's dead, or what else? So like I'll sit there and I'll cry because I've remembered that my mum isn't alive anymore. And Sophie was actually with me when I had a grief attack. I don't know if you're going to know about it.
In class?
Well, I've had two with you.
I think I remember one of them.
Yeah. So there was this one time where I had an argument with one of my friends at the time, and I had a grief attack after that because I was kind of just like, I need my mum right now, but obviously she's not here. And then there was the time in the cinema, which you might not have known to be a grief attack, because basically, right, if you haven't watched...
Was it with Maze Runner?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You're putting the pieces together.
Yeah.
Because basically, if you haven't watched
Maze Runner Death Cure.
That's it. I couldn't remember. Then you might want to skip ahead because I'm going to give some spoilers. But basically, Newt dies in the film, and then...
Which one, sorry? The English one?
The English one,
The English one that looks about 12, but is actually like 26.
Spoilers. I haven't seen that film.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right, I don't care. I probably wouldn't watch it.
Yeah.
I don't watch films.
And then Newt gives Thomas a letter, isn't it?
Yeah,
His
and
necklace.
they read the letter out.
Yeah. And that basically triggered off a grief attack for me, because I never got that kind of letter with my mum.
Yeah.
Because the way that she died and the kind of timeline of it just didn't end up that way. And it's something that I always kind of craved. I was just like, I really wish I had that finalising letter to be like, Emma, you're going to be fine. Things are going to be okay. You're like, I'm really proud of you, etc. And that kind of just set off this grief attack in the cinema, and everyone, I assume, probably thought it was about...
It was for the film. I never knew that until now.
Yeah,
that it was
I
about
hadn't
that.
Told
No.
But it was quite funny, because what we want to do with this podcast, we don't want it to be all doom and gloom and sadness, because obviously bereavement and death, it's not a nice topic, and it's not something that I'd want anyone to endure. But at the same time, there are funnier moments. So,
yeah.
For example, we were in the cinema and I had that grief attack and I was crying and I was sobbing, and everyone else in the cinema, to me it seemed like, was quiet. And I think either Gina or you turned around and went, everyone's looking around at you, Emma. And the people in front of us, I think they were like tutting at me or something, because they just assumed it was about the film.
Yeah.
But it's funny how little things like that can trigger it off.
It's just sort of a sudden realisation, I guess.
Yeah.
Something you're used to for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And then, something triggering it, as you said.
Yeah.
It's pretty... obviously in the situation you were in the cinema, you were watching a sad part of the film, people just thought it was because of that. And obviously it's, now you've said about it, it's like, I've witnessed one of these, but I never knew,
Mm-hmm. And yeah, that's something that I didn't really expect when my mum did die. I didn't expect for there to be that kind of grief attack. So I just wanted people to know that they exist, and that they can happen. They're quite sudden. You don't expect them, like with an anxiety attack or a panic attack, you might feel them coming on. Up. Whereas with grief attacks, I personally, in my personal experience, don't really tend to feel them coming on. Or I might see myself in a situation and think, oh, a grief attack could happen.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, sometimes they just happen, and then you kind of work through it and cry or react in your certain way and then move on from it. Yeah, so moving on from that, I kind of wanted to talk about kind of what other things happen when a teenager is grieving, or coping with a bereavement, because obviously my experience isn't, like I said, going to be the same thing as another person. So if I'm just looking at some resources that I have now, some of the kind of, I like to call them side effects of grief. I don't know whether that's kind of a technological term that people would use or whether it's suitable, but I think grief is more than just sadness, like that definition said, because there's so many different aspects of it. So yeah, apparently, obviously I haven't experienced all of these, but you can feel numb after someone's died. You may even go through disbelief or denial. You may feel guilty or blame yourself about the death, and be irrational in your thoughts. So for example, I know I used to think irrationally. I used to think, oh, if I don't do this, then mum might live on for a bit longer. Or if I don't swear for a month. It sounds so stupid.
Yeah.
But like, I'd be like, oh, like, I'm not religious, but like, when it comes to, yeah,
it's like if I do a good thing, something good will happen.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Or like, so for example, I'm not religious, but when my mum was dying, and I still even sometimes now go through it, I'll be like, oh well, if I don't do this, or if I don't eat chocolate for like a couple of weeks, then maybe God, even though I'm not religious, will let my mum live for a bit. And it sounds so stupid, but these irrational thoughts go through your head. I don't know if you've experienced any of that, Ryan.
Yeah, a bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, at night time, I think mine comes on when I'm on my own in the dark, and then I'm kind of like, I don't think about it a lot, to be honest, because I've had a lot of years to think about it, but I do still think about her, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of like, I just think, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And I always think that at night time.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to daytime, I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
You know,
I feel like that's the same with me, kind of at night. It tends to be more like I'm more emotional in the evening. Or it might be at the end of the day when I'm a bit more tired or something. But
I feel like when you're tired or when it's the end of the day, you're more open to emotions and sort of overthinking things, you know, because when you're tired, you let your guard down. Yeah.
And you've got more of that time to think, I suppose.
Yeah.
But alongside with that, there's also confusion, because you can't really understand what's happened to you. You might be emotionally drained. Some people experience feelings of depression, and may want to think about your own death. And although that sounds like a really horrible thing to happen, apparently it's a perfectly normal reaction to someone dying.
So basically, if anyone who's listening has been through it and they're experiencing them, then any of them side effects, then don't worry, because you're not the only person having them.
It's a process.
Yeah. And I think there are some people go around and they'll be like, oh, you've got 7 stages of grief and then you'll be done with it. Like, that's it, you're done. For me personally, I disagree with that. I think in my experience, I've gone through different stages and I've floated in and out of them again.
It's not a concrete phase, is it? Everyone's different. It's not set in stone that that's going to happen then, that's going to happen then.
Yeah,
it happens to you.
I mean, it never stops.
No.
I mean, I know she won't mind me talking about this. My mum lost her mum when she was young, and even now, like, she's well in her 50s and she still thinks about her mum. She still gets upset.
Yeah.
You know, she's like, oh, I wish my mum was here for this event.
Yeah.
That sort of stuff. You never stop.
I think that brings it up as well when there's certain things that you think, that would have been nice for her to be there, obviously.
And obviously my mum's got kids of her own, so she's always like, oh, your nan would have liked to seen this, you know. And it's just a constant process. You never sort of get over it. Definitely. Especially when it is your parent.
Yeah, because I don't know, again, Ryan, if this is the same for you, but like when my mum kind of was about to die, I know I'm being quite blunt about the way that I say things because people tend to use euphemisms, something that we're going to be talking about later on, but that's just the way that I deal with it. I say die, dead. But yeah, basically before she was dying, I kind of had these thoughts of, oh, she's not going to be at my wedding. If I ever get married or if I have kids, then I'm going to meet their grandmother, and kind of just those thoughts. And even when we went to Disneyland Paris, my mum normally would have dropped me off and waved me off and be like, but it was my dad that time, and me and my dad, we didn't have the best relationship because I was closer to my mum, and things have obviously, a lot's changed, but it's just those little thoughts, it can kind of bring things up. And physical effects that people might experience when they're grieving, or someone in their life has died, is maybe that you might go off of your food or find it becomes tasteless. You might find it hard to sleep, and obviously as a result become more tired and irritable, and also when trying to concentrate at school or work. So this is actually something that I've experienced. So in kind of the first couple of months when we went back to college, because I obviously wasn't in at the same time you guys started, I started a few weeks later, I found it really difficult to concentrate, and sometimes I still do. And it was actually quite frustrating for me because I would come into college and it was literally like, what's the point? I've done no work by the end of today.
Yeah.
But it was just a case of, although I wasn't necessarily constantly thinking about mum, I'd still not be able to concentrate on my college work, which was quite frustrating. But it obviously, things change and time passes, and the physical effects are less existing. That wasn't English.
Existent.
There we go. Got Brian over here. He's my assistant editor for a reason. Delayed grief is also something. So I was quite proactive in the sense that when my mum, just before my mum died, I actually went and saw a therapist, which sounds really pretentious, but I actually think that it's really important for you to be able to talk to someone. Obviously, we're talking to each other about this kind of thing. But
and therapists are there for a reason.
Yeah.
They have a job for a reason. If you need them, go to them.
Yeah, so with the kind of organisation, luckily I can get it for free. But yeah, basically I was quite proactive when my mum died. I was just like, right, I really need to talk to someone about this because I need to be able to work through it. And yeah, some people, those feelings emerge later. So for example, I think with younger children, probably it's more difficult to understand that grief because obviously I don't know from personal experience, but I feel like grieving as a child is a lot different to grieving as a teenager. Again, Ryan, I don't know if I don't know, obviously.
Can I just ask, Ryan, how old were you?
Nearly 5.
Nearly 5, okay. I didn't know how old you were.
A couple of weeks before my 5th birthday.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
So did you know what was like going on at the time?
No, not really. I've spoken to my dad about it prior, obviously, even a couple of months ago, and basically the most sad thing that I heard was kind of that he just had to tell me, you're never going to see her again, basically. And obviously at the time you're like, we'll go over there and play football or whatever.
Yeah.
So you don't really understand it as much. So I didn't understand it. I don't remember the funeral.
Yeah, I feel like with little children, they don't really understand the concept of death. Yeah. We talk about how they don't understand the difference between video games and real life, because in video games you can just come back alive. Yeah. It's the same with real life. When you tell a little child that someone's not going to be back in their life, they don't quite understand it until it's been a week or so and they still haven't seen them. You know?
And that actually links on to my next topic that I wanted to talk about, which is euphemisms, and whether you guys think that they should be used when you're talking about someone who's died. Because I disagree, and I think that, there's part of me that thinks in some senses it is kind of good to use euphemisms, but also, especially when it comes to young children, I think as much as they possibly can, shouldn't be used because it can be actually quite confusing for young people.
I think it's dependent on people. I agree with you in the fact that I think it's, for a child, it's patronising, actually.
Yeah.
I think that tell them how it is, you know. I know it sounds harsh. That sounds very harsh. But going through it, you know, it would work, I think. And that's bad, but...
No. Did you, did people use euphemisms with you? So, for example, Mummy's gone away with the angels, or she's gone to sleep.
I can't remember too much, actually, but I imagine probably.
Yeah.
I imagine, I don't know whether it was any of those specific sayings, but I imagine it was probably something like that. But like I said, it was probably something more like you won't be seeing her again. Okay. Which is sad, obviously.
Yeah, but it's horrific that people have to lose their parents at such a young age.
But I'm lucky in a different sense because I've known my stepmom even before my mum died, so I'm not a bad case of it. Whereas some people, when their mother died, they have no one. But you know, she's been basically my mum for my whole life. Yeah. So
and obviously it's not like a replacement, but it is
but
someone who can sort of...
I consider her like my mum because she's been there pretty much my whole life. So I'm lucky in that sense. Whereas other people, if they're really unfortunate and have both parents pass, or even just one parent pass and that's all they had, then they've got no one, and that's more sad, if anything, that people will lose someone and then have nothing.
Yeah,
that's obviously I'm not discrediting the fact that my mum died or whatever just because I have a very good stepmum.
Yeah,
but I think that helps a lot in comparison to no one, basically.
You're being very considerate of other people out there, which is lovely. So apparently there's over 200 euphemisms that are used related to death and dying. So
it's a lot more than I thought.
Yeah. Can you guys think of any that you've heard?
Well, I tend to use passed away a lot.
Yeah.
Passed away is the main one.
I feel like it's
quite a lot.
Just a nicer way of saying dead, but not being sort of patronising in a way.
Yeah, that one I agree with, because it's basically like saying
they've passed on to what some people would consider a next life, or next stage, whatever.
Exactly.
I feel like me going up to someone and saying, "Oh, this family member is dead," I feel like I'm being
aggressive.
a bit aggressive. And there's bad connotations around the words death and dead.
Yeah.
Whereas if you say, "Oh, they've passed away," it's a bit calmer. But obviously everyone's up to using whatever words they want. Yeah. Passed away, I feel like, is the most common.
Yeah, that's the one I hear all the time, really.
Yeah. There's some really crazy ones that I was reading about, and I was just like, I would never use that. But there's also part of me that doesn't like using, for example, "Oh, we lost my mum," or this, that, and the other, because although some people might disagree with me, saying that you've lost someone, you're not going to get them back. You're not going to find them. So
if you've lost someone, there's a chance you can find them.
To what the situation is actually, what's actually occurring.
Yeah, because obviously, I understand everyone deals with death in their own way, and everyone has different responses, and they might. Because I know that when I was having the therapy sessions, my therapist would continuously use the word dead or died, and I'd. At the beginning of the sessions I was having, I was just I don't like the fact that she's saying that my mum's died. I'd prefer she said passed away. But now that I've had more, I feel like I personally prefer saying died or dead, which it's quite blunt, but it's just personally my way of, that's just my way of saying it, because that's how it is. Nothing's changing. I can't.
Yeah.
But I know that obviously a lot of other people have their own different way of experiencing grief. But some of them I heard. So, for example, "Gone for a Burton" is a UK. UK.
I feel like that's something you'd hear in movies when it's sort of a comedic death, that kind of thing.
Or in the Cockney rhyming slang, "brown bread."
Yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah,
I've never heard of that.
I know that one.
Or apparently in the movie The Godfather, this is more of an American one, "sleeping with the fishes."
I've heard of that one, but
Yeah.
I've never heard anyone use it in a sentence.
And Australianism, carked it.
Carked it. No, I haven't heard that one.
Yeah, like I've heard more of like for example from 1665 it says in this article that I've got 6 feet under. I've heard that before.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that one's a very common one, I think.
Yeah, I think personally with, like you were saying, with children it should be kind of more to the point about it, obviously whilst being sensitive at the same time. Because it can cause kind of confusion. So especially when some parents might say, oh, she's just sleeping, or she's gone to sleep with the angels, or she's just sleeping forever. Because kids go to sleep every night, and it must, like, scare the hell out of them.
It's given them the option, you know, they're going to wake up.
Yeah.
But
exactly.
Obviously, you know they're not.
Yeah. I just wanted to see what you guys had thoughts on that, and whether you think euphemisms should be used in general.
I mean, in terms of, not really euphemisms, but explaining to children what's going on.
Yeah.
When I think it was just before I was 6, my mum went through cancer. She was in the hospital for quite a while. But I wasn't really told why.
Yeah.
I just knew that I had to go to the hospital every now and then, and like I'd see her and she'd look sick, but I was never told why.
Oh yeah.
And you know, I was close to losing her, but I would have I feel like if she had just gone all of a sudden, I would have been angry.
Yeah.
And you know, confused as to why I wasn't told why she's just disappeared. You know, but I feel like you just need to sit down with children and explain what's happening in those sorts of times, because children know a lot more than you think. They're smart. They pick up on so many things. You know, you think about how many parents go through divorces and then they try and explain to the child what's happening, but they already know because they're not silly, you know.
No, kids can pick up on things quite quickly.
So I feel like not necessarily euphemisms with saying, oh, they've died or they've passed away, but in terms of the process of it, if there is a lead up to the death, they need to know why, because otherwise it's going to cause confusion afterwards. So
I think that kind of relates to delayed grief as well.
Yeah.
Because if they don't really understand what's going on at the time, they might have feelings of grief that they're not necessarily be able to kind of recognise.
Yeah.
And it might relate to kind of that delayed grief again in the future, where they've got all of these unsolved kind of questions in their head, or unanswered questions in their head.
And I feel if they don't know what's going on, they don't really have a chance to say goodbye, if that makes sense. So with delayed grief, I feel they're going to be confused for a while, and then it's going to hit them hard with, you know, this person's not coming back in my life kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I feel like it would just be easier if you explain to them, and then it kind of avoids the delayed grief because they're going through it as a process. Yeah. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
We're going to list a kind of different list of great English, Emma, of resources on the Adolescence website, because this is going to be posted on our website. And we'll just put all of the resources that we think are suitable for people in Essex. So, for example, there's the Young Concerned Trust, Cruise Bereavement Care, because and also like Winston's Wish, because we're in the Essex area, and obviously we can't provide information for every single area of the UK. But just know that obviously reach out to people if you're having any of these kind of experiences, I suppose, and know that you're not alone, and that it's okay to experience all of these things if you're definitely grieving, or if you've been bereaved, because it's although it might not feel normal to you at the same time, it is normal to maybe potentially feel angry or to feel sad. And maybe to have that sudden grief attack that you might not necessarily know is a grief attack.
I mean, the whole point of this podcast is sort of to give our own stories and explain to people that, you know, we've gone through what you've gone through, or we've been in a process that you've been through, whether it be a parent or a grandparent or a sibling, you know, and we're putting these website links on here because there's so many people that you can talk to, therapists, you know, people in hospitals. There's so many people, mental health, who can help you with these emotions. You know, if you're angry, if you're sad.
One thing I would like to quickly mention is it's a very, very touchy subject, and I know that. And if you guys don't want to talk about it, then that is fine. The C word, cancer.
Yeah.
A lot. That is one thing that I'd say. What was the word? Euphemism.
Yeah.
It's difficult because it's such a bad thing. We've all been through it, like you said. And obviously that was my granddad died last year of it as well. So it's something we've all been through, and it's something that, you know, a crazy amount of people worldwide go through. And I think that I just wanted to quickly mention it because I think people, like you said earlier with children and stuff, I think they deserve to know. Obviously it's a very scary thing to tell someone that a relative or yourself has got cancer, because even speaking about it now, it is a difficult word to say, but that's because it's been drummed into everyone's heads that you shouldn't speak about it.
Yeah, because and there's also the argument that people use it as an adjective now. So I found that there are a lot of people like around us even that use the word cancer.
They use it as a joke.
Yeah, or cancerous, which I can understand is part of like teenage culture in some sense, but I personally don't like the use of the word as an adjective.
Well, you don't know what anyone's been through.
Yeah.
If you start using that word around groups of people, everyone has a different story. So many people have been involved with it. If it's not direct, if it's, you know, if it's family members, if it's friends, if it's friends of friends, etc., you know, whatever. So many people, if you ask probably 100 people, I'd say probably 95 have been involved somehow with cancer. And so, but if you asked 100 people how many times they speak about it, it's probably a vast minority
and
who
I think
speak about it.
That's kind of why we wanted to do this podcast, is to be able to talk about subjects that wouldn't necessarily be spoken about within young groups of people, and we want to give a voice to young people out there, so you can...
Don't be afraid to talk about things. Emotions, you're going to get emotional about these type of things. Obviously me and Emma have been through, and Sophie's been through bad things as well. Me and Emma, you know, both of our mums passing away is very sad, and we are emotional obviously even at the minute talking about it, but it's okay to talk about it. It's something that should be encouraged by people to discuss between people, but that's the problem. That's why we're doing this, is because not enough people are discussing it, not enough people are interacting if they feel down about it. And I think that's why mental health is so kind of worldwide now, because people just keep everything in, and I am one of those. I keep my feelings to myself. But people should kind of branch out and speak to each other about it. But that's the problem, is that not enough people are.
Because even like before I came back to college, one of my friends again at the time told me that our tutor had mentioned about someone's parent dying, and obviously it was about me, and I was kind of just like, I really wish he hadn't said that, because I was kind of like, I wanted to come back to college and I didn't want people questioning, oh, why has Emma not been in for a couple of weeks?
Obviously, I was curious because we're friends outside of podcasts, etc. And I remember when Layla said, because she was coming around with a bucket for people to put money in for it, and obviously instantly when I asked, and she was like, our student's mum died. So instantly being who, well, having been through what I am, I put a decent amount in there, because even if I didn't know who that person was, I know what they've been through. I care. So that obviously, and then I kind of started to put the pieces together a bit, but obviously I wasn't going to make any assumptions, and I never thought for 1 minute that that's the reason that you weren't here. But when I found out, I was gutted for you.
Oh, thank you. That's a bit of a weird response. Oh, thank you.
No.
But I suppose that's kind of, again, the point of the podcast, is death can be an awkward subject to talk about. Even like before we did this podcast, I was just like, oh, I don't know how to approach it within the podcast. And I think it's just a case of us doing this is kind of trying to start a conversation, whether you're listening to this by yourself or you're listening to it with a friend, or if you're at home, etc. Even just, not that I'm saying it's easy just to drop death into like mid-conversation, be like, sit down at lunch and be like, oh yeah, should we talk about bereavement today, guys?
Yeah,
but a lot of time, I mean, death is just something that can come so unexpectedly. Things like sickness and, you know, sudden death, you know. So even if you just go home and talk to your parents about it or talk to your siblings about it, you know, like... I've had conversations with my grandparents about, you know, what do you want us to do once you've died? Because it's not something that you just sort of talk about.
Yeah.
But you need to talk about it. Otherwise, once it happens, you don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And you don't know what they would have wanted
That's
after they've gone.
That when my mum died, she didn't make a will. So
same. My mum died when she was 35. So
Jesus, yeah.
So
and I mean that's such a young age. You don't think to make those kind of things.
And planning the funeral and stuff, and like it's not knowing what they would have wanted and trying to have to gauge that decision of would they have wanted this, would they have wanted flowers at their funeral?
Yeah.
And it's, again, like you were saying, having that conversation with your grandparents is, although it's a horrifying thing to think about, and it's also really
and especially
sad.
when it's things like their possessions. Like if you imagine yourself dying, you've got certain things that you'd want to go to certain people, especially if you have kids. Like you'd want them to have certain things.
Yeah.
You don't want someone else making those decisions for you. Like, yeah, you're gone, but those were still your things. You had a decision to who to give them to and what to do with them. And, you know, if you die suddenly, you don't get that decision.
Yeah. Having had the experience that you've had, Ryan, and Sophie as well, do you think that you've thought about death yourself, not as in committing suicide or anything?
No,
as in
like
general death.
Yeah, and what you think will happen, or what you want to happen?
A little bit. At first, when I first kind of found out about it, I was wondering... Firstly, can it be passed down? Because my mum didn't die of cancer; she died of something called MS, multiple sclerosis.
Yeah.
Which is a horrible illness as well, but something that I would like to raise awareness for.
Yeah,
by the way.
My mum has a friend with that, I believe.
Yeah, and it's very difficult because either it can last over like a span of 20 to 30 years of someone having it, or you can have it for a year and pass away. But anyway, that's a different tangent. What are we talking about?
It's all right. Just whether you
thought about death, at night again is probably when I do more than any other time. But I wouldn't say. Obviously, everyone's scared of it because no one wants to die.
No, you can't prevent it. No, but it is still scary.
It's like a looming kind of thought, isn't it?
You know, when people are scared of heights or they're scared of, I don't know, spiders or something. I'm scared about death. I used to go to bed and sometimes it'd be like, I'd have really irrational thoughts. So I'd be like, oh, did I turn my hair straightener off? If that, even though it might not necessarily be, or that might start a fire, and what if a fire happens and then I'm going to die, and I don't want to die because
just a tangent, just keep going on and on.
Although people might want to avoid the conversation, there's got to be a point in some part of your life where you can't avoid it.
Yeah.
So like we said, we want to give that platform for people to listen about our opinions. Again, I didn't really say this at the beginning, but obviously these are just our personal opinions. We're not professionals. And again, we just want to give a voice to young people for you guys to listen to and kind of understand what we've been through, and what our opinions are, so that you can potentially relate to one of us or find information. So for example, like Sophie and Ryan, they might not have known about grief attacks or my experience with them before this podcast, and you guys might not know at home, wherever you're listening. But
don't feel alone.
Definitely don't feel alone. Reach out to people. Sorry, just had a bit of a hiccup there.
Reach out to us if you need to.
Honestly,
we'll always be here to talk.
Yeah, so you can reach us on social media. So for example, our Instagram is at Adolescence Magazine, or our Twitter is at Adolescence Mag. We'll put the links and stuff on our
And that sounds awkward talking to someone who you probably don't know, but we honestly would like it if somebody was to reach out.
And sometimes it helps talking to someone you don't know. I mean, I've never talked to a therapist or anything like that. I've never really needed to, but you know, I've only ever talked to friends, but I mean, I know it helps you.
Yeah.
Talking to like therapists and things.
Yeah, because it's kind of like an outside opinion, if that makes sense. So, like I was saying, me and my dad don't have the best relationship.
Yeah.
But being able to go and talk to someone about that, and kind of like, so for example, if we had an argument, I'd be able to go and talk about it, and then be like, oh, okay, this is a way to approach it.
Yeah.
And kind of work our way through dealing with my mum dying. So. Yeah, I hope you guys have randomly, this is probably not the best way to word it, but enjoyed listening.
Yes, thank you.
That's all we really have time for today. So thank you for listening to our first ever episode. I want to say a big thank you to Ryan and Sophie for sharing their stories today and joining me.
Thank you.
Very much.
Otherwise, you would have had, we've spoken for an hour, you would have had 56 minutes of me talking to myself, which probably wouldn't have been the best thing. And we'd absolutely love to hear your opinions. So you can reach us again on Twitter or Instagram or on the website. And we'll insert all of the different social media links, etc., where necessary.
And give us more topics to talk about.
Yes.
Anything,
Shout, Sophie.
everything.
Yeah,
we could expand on the topic we've talked about today.
Please.
Just a random topic. We
Yeah.
don't necessarily have to know about it.
No.
You just have a discussion.
That's what the world of the internet is there for.
Yeah.
To research.
Because, maybe Ryan can take the host seat for the football one if we ever do it. And then I'll take a seat back from doing the talking. And yeah, so please do send in your opinions or comments or feedback. We'd love to hear them. Thank you for listening again. We hope you enjoyed, and bye for now.
See ya.
Bye.